Mother Bear dragged a car seat out of river. The identity of its passenger stunned everyone. Let us know where you're watching from. If you love my content, consider supporting it with a super thanks. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. It'll help us to remain in touch with amazing people like you. The last golden rays of sunlight filtered through the dense canopy of pine trees, casting long shadows across the narrow hiking trail that wound alongside the Blackwater River. The water rushed and tumbled over smooth stones, its surface occasionally catching the light and sparkling like scattered diamonds. The air was thick with the earthy scent of moss and the sweet fragrance of wildflowers that dotted the riverbank. Olivia Westbrook paused to catch her breath, her hiking boots firmly planted on a flat rock jutting out from the trail. Sweat beaded on her forehead as she pushed a strand of auburn hair behind her ear and took a long drink from her water bottle. The cool liquid was refreshing against her parched throat. She had been hiking for nearly 3 hours, hoping to capture photographs of the sunset from Eagle's Peak, but now she wondered if she would make it before darkness fell. Just another mile, she whispered to herself, checking her watch. The forest around her was alive with sounds, birds calling to one another, the rustling of leaves in the gentle breeze, and the constant, soothing babble of the river. Olivia loved these moments of solitude, far away from the chaos of the city where she worked as a wildlife photographer. As she adjusted her backpack and prepared to continue her journey, a strange sound cut through the natural symphony of the forest. It wasn't the familiar call of a bird or the rustling of an animal moving through the underbrush. It was something different, something that made her skin prickle with unease. A splash, followed by what sounded almost like a whimper. Olivia froze, her senses suddenly alert. She scanned the river, its rushing waters catching the fading light. At first, she saw nothing unusual. Then, about 20 yards downstream, something caught her eye. Something that didn't belong in this pristine wilderness. A flash of blue plastic bobbed in the current, periodically disappearing beneath the surface before emerging again. Olivia squinted, trying to make sense of what she was seeing. As the object rotated in the water, her breath caught in her throat. It was a car seat, a baby's car seat, being carried downstream by the river's powerful current. "Oh my God!" she gasped, immediately scrambling down the rocky embankment toward the water's edge. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she tried to keep the car seat in sight. Questions raced through her mind. How did a car seat end up in the river? Was there an accident? And most terrifying of all, was there a baby still strapped inside? As Olivia reached the water's edge, ready to wade in if necessary, movement in her peripheral vision made her stop abruptly. She turned her head slowly, and her blood ran cold. Less than 30 feet away stood a massive brown bear, its fur glistening wet as if it had recently been in the water. The bear's dark eyes were fixed not on Olivia, but on the car seat that continued to bob and weave through the rushing current. Behind the large bear, 2 small cubs peered curiously from behind a fallen log. Olivia's instincts screamed at her to back away slowly. Everything she knew about bear safety told her to create distance between herself and a mother with cubs. But before she could move, the mother bear did something that froze Olivia in place. The bear lumbered toward the river's edge, its powerful body moving with surprising grace. Then, as the car seat floated closer, the bear stretched out one massive paw, and with a swift movement, hooked the strap of the car seat and dragged it from the water. Olivia watched in stunned disbelief as the car seat landed on the muddy bank with a soft thud. Water streamed from its soaked fabric and plastic frame. The bear sniffed at it curiously, nudging it with her snout. And then, Olivia could have sworn she heard it, A soft, mewling cry emerged from within the car seat. The sound sent a jolt of adrenaline through Olivia's body. There was something alive inside that car seat. Something that had survived being swept downriver. Something that had just been rescued by a wild bear. As if sensing Olivia's presence for the first time, the mother bear's head snapped up, her eyes locking with Olivia's. The photographer remained perfectly still, barely daring to breathe. The bear let out a low, rumbling growl, not aggressive but warning. The standoff lasted only seconds, but to Olivia it felt like an eternity. In those moments, a strange understanding seemed to pass between woman and bear, an acknowledgement of the bizarre situation they both found themselves in. Then the sound came again from the car seat, louder this time, more insistent. The mother bear looked down at the car seat, then back at Olivia, as if making a decision. Slowly, deliberately, the bear backed away from the car seat, retreating several feet while keeping her eyes fixed on Olivia. Was the bear allowing her to approach? Olivia's mind reeled at the impossibility of what was happening. Yet the mother bear continued to back away, her cubs watching curiously from their hiding place. The car seat sat on the muddy bank, water still dripping from its frame, whatever was inside now making consistent whimpering sounds. Taking a deep breath, Olivia began to move forward, her steps slow and deliberate. Her hands trembled as she approached the car seat, the mother bear watching her every move. The forest around them had grown unnaturally quiet, as if the whole wilderness was holding its breath. As Olivia reached the car seat and knelt beside it, her heart was pounding so loudly she was sure the bear could hear it. With shaking hands, she reached for the soaked blanket that covered the car seat's occupant, preparing herself for what she might find. She pulled back the blanket, and a strangled gasp escaped her lips. What she saw inside the car seat would change everything. Inside the car seat, wet and shivering but unmistakably alive, was a baby. A human baby. The infant couldn't have been more than 6 months old, with wisps of dark hair plastered to its tiny head. Its face was pale from the cold, lips tinged with blue, but its chest rose and fell with each breath. One small fist was tightly clutched around a soggy stuffed rabbit, the toy almost unrecognizable after its journey through the river. "Oh my God," Olivia whispered, her voice barely audible over the sound of the rushing water. Who would... Words failed her as she stared at the miracle before her. The baby's eyes fluttered open at the sound of her voice, deep blue eyes that regarded her with an unnerving calmness despite the ordeal it had endured. Then, as if suddenly remembering its predicament, the infant's face crumpled and it began to cry. A weak, pitiful sound that tore at Olivia's heart. Instinctively, she reached for the strap securing the baby in the car seat, her fingers fumbling with the wet buckles. She needed to get the child warm and dry as quickly as possible. As she worked, she was acutely aware of the mother bear's presence, still watching from a distance, her cubs now peeking out curiously from behind her massive form. "It's okay, little one," Olivia murmured, finally freeing the baby from the restraints. "I've got you now. You're safe." She carefully lifted the infant from the car seat, cradling it against her chest. The baby's clothes were soaked through, its tiny body trembling with cold. Without hesitation, Olivia unzipped her jacket and tucked the baby inside, close to her body heat, leaving just the small face exposed to the air. Only then did she allow herself to look more closely at the car seat. It was expensive, the kind with extra padding and safety features that cost hundreds of dollars. A small embroidered name was partially visible on the blanket. "Emmett." "Emmett," Olivia whispered, testing the name. The baby responded with a whimper, confirming her suspicion. "What happened to you, Emmett?" Where are your parents?" As if in answer to her question, the mother bear let out a low grunt. Olivia's head snapped up, expecting to see the animal charging toward her. Instead, the bear was sniffing the air, her attention diverted upstream. Her posture had changed, tensed, alert, as if sensing danger. Then Olivia heard it too. Voices. Human voices. Distant, but growing closer. The bear heard them as well, and with another grunt to her cubs, she began to retreat into the trees, casting one last glance at Olivia and the baby before disappearing into the underbrush. Olivia stood frozen for a moment. The baby clutched protectively against her chest. Should she call out? What if these people were responsible for abandoning the baby in the river? The thought sent a chill down her spine that had nothing to do with her wet clothes. Before she could decide, two figures emerged around the bend in the trail. A man and a woman, both dressed in dark clothing, picking their way carefully along the riverbank. They hadn't noticed Olivia yet, their attention focused on scanning the river itself. "I'm telling you, it came downstream this way," the man said, his voice carrying easily over the water. "It couldn't have gone far. And I'm telling you, we should have made sure," the woman hissed back. "If anyone finds it—" "No one's going to find anything," the man cut her off. "This river feeds into rapids half a mile down. Nothing survives that." Olivia's blood ran cold as the implications of their conversation became clear. These people hadn't accidentally lost a baby in the river. They had deliberately put it there. And now they were making sure their plan had worked. Moving as quietly as possible, Olivia began to back away, each step carefully placed to avoid making noise. The baby, as if sensing the need for silence, had quieted against her chest, its small body warming slowly within her jacket. She needed to get away from these people to find help for the baby, to alert authorities. But just as she was about to turn and move deeper into the forest, her foot came down on a fallen branch. The sharp crack echoed through the trees like a gunshot. The couple's heads whipped around simultaneously, their eyes widening as they spotted Olivia and what she was cradling against her chest. "Hey!" the man shouted, already starting to move toward her. "What do you have there?" Olivia didn't wait to answer. She turned and ran, cradling Emmett protectively against her with one arm while the other pumped at her side. She abandoned the trail, plunging into the denser forest where the underbrush might slow her pursuers. Branches whipped at her face and arms as she ran, her breath coming in ragged gasps. The extra weight of the baby threw off her balance, making her progress slower than she would have liked. Behind her, she could hear the couple crashing through the forest, gaining on her. "Stop!" the woman's voice rang out. "That's our baby. Our son fell in the river. We've been looking everywhere for him." The lie was so blatant it almost made Olivia laugh hysterically. She didn't slow down, didn't look back. She just ran, her mind racing to form a plan. Her car was parked at the trailhead, but that was at least 2 miles away. She couldn't outrun them for that long, not while carrying Emmett. As she topped a small rise, Olivia nearly collided with a large, fallen tree trunk blocking her path. It was too high to jump with the baby in her arms, and going around would waste precious seconds. She could hear her pursuers getting closer, their angry shouts carrying through the trees. In desperation, she looked around for somewhere to hide, somewhere to make a stand, and then she saw it. A dense thicket of brambles beside the fallen tree. If she could get inside, it might offer some protection, at least until she could think of a better plan. Ignoring the thorns that clawed at her clothes and skin, Olivia pushed her way into the center of the thicket, turning so that her body shielded the baby from the worst of the sharp branches. Once inside, she crouched down, making herself as small as possible, and waited. Seconds later, the couple reached the fallen tree. They stopped, both breathing heavily, looking around wildly. "Where did she go?" the woman demanded, her voice tight with anger. "She couldn't have gotten far." "Spread out," the man ordered. "She has to be hiding somewhere close." Olivia held her breath as footsteps approached her hiding place. The baby stirred against her chest, making a small sound that she prayed wouldn't be heard over the normal forest noises. She pressed her lips to the top of Emmett's head, silently pleading with him to stay quiet just a little longer. The footsteps stopped just feet away from the thicket. Olivia could see the man's boots through gaps in the brambles, so close she could have reached out and touched them. She remained perfectly still, hardly daring to breathe. "There's no sign of her," the man called out after a moment. "She must have kept running." "We need to find her," the woman replied, her voice farther away. "She saw us. She has the baby." "I know what's at stake," the man snapped. "Let's try further down the slope." "She probably tried to circle back to the trail." The boots moved away, and Olivia allowed herself to take a shallow breath. She waited until she could no longer hear their voices before carefully shifting position, wincing as thorns scratched at her arms and face. Emmett was fully awake now, his blue eyes fixed on her face. Remarkably, he wasn't crying, almost as if he understood the danger they were in. Olivia managed a small smile for him, trying to project a confidence she didn't feel. "We're going to be okay," she whispered, so softly that only he could hear. "I promise I won't let anything happen to you." As she spoke the words, she realized she meant them with every fiber of her being. In the short time since finding him in that car seat, she had developed a fierce protectiveness toward this abandoned child. Whatever it took, she would get him to safety. But how? Her phone had no signal in this remote area. She had checked earlier when taking photos. Her car was miles away, and between her and it were two people who clearly wanted to ensure that both she and Emmett disappeared permanently. A soft rustling sound outside the thicket made Olivia tense again. Had they doubled back? She peered through the brambles, expecting to see the couple's boots. Instead, what she saw nearly stopped her heart. A massive paw stepped into view, followed by another. The mother bear had returned, and she was right outside Olivia's hiding place. For a moment, sheer panic threatened to overwhelm her. Trapped in a thicket with a baby, with a wild bear just feet away, it seemed her situation couldn't possibly get worse. But then she remembered how gently the bear had dragged the car seat from the river, how she had seemed to deliberately back away to let Olivia retrieve the baby. Almost without thinking, Olivia made a soft huffing sound, similar to the one the mother bear had made earlier. It was a crazy, desperate move, but she was out of options. The bear's snout appeared at an opening in the brambles, her nostrils flaring as she took in their scent. Olivia remained still, holding Emmett close, ready to shield him with her body if necessary. For a long moment, the bear simply looked at them, her intelligent eyes seeming to assess the situation. Then, to Olivia's amazement, the bear began to tear at the brambles with her powerful claws, widening the opening. Was the bear trying to get to them, or, the thought seemed impossible, was she trying to help them escape? Before Olivia could decide how to react, distant voices reached her ears once more. The couple was returning. The bear heard them too, her head turning toward the sound. Then she looked back at Olivia and made that same huffing noise again, more insistent this time. In that moment, Olivia made a decision that defied all logic and everything she knew about wild animals. Clutching Emmett securely, she crawled toward the opening the bear had created and emerged from the thicket. The bear immediately turned and began walking away, pausing after a few steps to look back as if checking whether Olivia was following. It was behavior Olivia had observed in mother bears with their cubs, a clear come-with-me signal. With the voices growing closer and no better option apparent, Olivia did the unthinkable. She followed the bear into the gathering darkness of the forest. The forest floor was carpeted with pine needles and decaying leaves that muffled her footsteps as she trailed behind the massive animal. Every instinct and piece of wilderness training told her that following a wild bear, especially a mother with cubs, was suicidal. Yet here she was, cradling a baby against her chest, placing her trust in a creature that could kill her with a single swipe of its powerful paw. The bear moved with surprising grace for its size, weaving between trees and navigating the uneven terrain with ease. It maintained a steady pace, not too fast for Olivia to follow, but quick enough to put distance between them and their pursuers. The two cubs bounded alongside their mother, occasionally glancing back at the strange human following their family. "Where are you taking us?" Olivia whispered, though she knew the bear couldn't answer. The words were more to comfort herself and Emmett than anything else. The baby had grown quiet, his eyes wide as he watched the dappled shadows pass overhead. Occasionally, he would make a soft cooing sound, almost as if he were enjoying this strange journey. Olivia checked him frequently, worried about his body temperature after his time in the cold river. But he seemed to be warming up inside her jacket. They had been walking for maybe 20 minutes when Olivia realized she could no longer hear their pursuers. The forest had grown darker as twilight deepened into night, making it increasingly difficult to see where she was placing her feet. She stumbled more frequently now, exhaustion beginning to take its toll. Just as she was wondering how much further she could go, the bear stopped. They had reached a small clearing where the tree canopy opened up to reveal a patch of star-studded sky. In the center of the clearing stood what appeared to be an old hunter's cabin, its wooden walls weathered by years of exposure to the elements. Olivia stared at the structure in disbelief. A cabin, out here in the middle of nowhere. It seemed too convenient, almost as if the bear had known exactly where to bring them. The thought was absurd, of course, and yet. The mother bear ambled to the edge of the clearing and then stopped, turning to look back at Olivia. The message seemed clear. This was as far as the bear would go. Olivia hesitated, torn between gratitude and a sudden fear of being left alone. "Thank you," she said softly to the bear, feeling only slightly foolish for talking to a wild animal. "I don't know why you helped us, but thank you." The bear huffed once more, then nudged her cubs toward the trees. Within moments, the family had disappeared into the shadows, leaving Olivia alone with Emmett in the clearing. The cabin looked abandoned, its small porch sagging slightly on one side. A thin layer of moss grew on the north-facing wall, and the single window visible from where Olivia stood was grimy with dirt and cobwebs. Still, it offered shelter, and possibly supplies that could help them survive the night. Cautiously, Olivia approached the cabin, alert for any signs of danger. The wooden steps creaked under her weight as she mounted the porch. The door was secured with a simple latch, no lock in sight. It seemed odd for a cabin so remote to be left unlocked, but perhaps the owner hadn't visited in years. Balancing Emmett carefully, she lifted the latch and pushed the door open. It swung inward with a low groan of rusty hinges. The interior was pitch black. "Hello?" Olivia called softly, though she expected no answer. "Is anyone here?" Silence greeted her. She fumbled in her backpack for her flashlight, finding it after a moment of awkward one-handed searching. The beam cut through the darkness, revealing a single room with sparse furnishings, a small table with 2 chairs, a rudimentary cooking area, and a narrow bed pushed against the far wall. A layer of dust covered everything, confirming her suspicion that the cabin had been empty for some time. Olivia stepped inside, closing the door behind her. The air was stale but dry, and importantly, it was warmer than outside. She swept the flashlight beam around the room, looking for anything useful. A cast-iron stove stood in one corner, and beside it was a stack of firewood, old and dry, but still burnable. A shelf above the bed held what looked like canned food, and a metal bucket sat beneath a water pump near the cooking area. "Looks like we found a safe place to spend the night, Emmett," she said, her voice sounding unnaturally loud in the quiet cabin. The baby responded with a small wiggle inside her jacket. First things first, she needed to get a fire going to warm the cabin and dry their clothes. She gently laid Emmett on the bed, wrapping him in the least dusty blanket she could find, then went to work on the stove. Thankfully, there were matches in a small tin on the shelf, and within minutes she had a fire crackling in the old stove. Heat began to radiate outward, chasing away the chill. Next, she tried the pump at the sink. After several stiff pumps, water, surprisingly clear, began to flow. Olivia almost cried with relief. Clean water meant she could wash Emmett, hydrate them both, and maybe even find a way to prepare some formula if there was anything suitable among the canned goods. As the cabin warmed, Olivia carefully removed Emmett's wet clothes. In the better light provided by both her flashlight and the stove's glow, she could see he was a beautiful baby, perhaps 5 or 6 months old based on his size. His skin was pale, but no longer had the dangerous bluish tinge, and his dark hair curled slightly as it dried. There were no visible injuries on his small body, which seemed miraculous given what he had endured. "You're quite the survivor, aren't you?" she murmured as she wrapped him in the blanket once more. As she tucked the blanket around him, something slipped from its folds. A small piece of paper that had somehow stayed with the baby through his ordeal in the river. Olivia picked it up carefully. It was damp and the ink had smudged, but some of the writing was still legible. It appeared to be a note, written in a hurried hand. "His name is Emmett. Please The rest was too water-damaged to read. Olivia stared at the note, her mind racing. This changed things. If someone had left a note with the baby, it suggested that putting him in the river hadn't been the original plan. Maybe the couple she'd encountered weren't Emmett's parents at all. Maybe they had found him, just as she had, and for some reason decided to get rid of him. But why would anyone abandon a baby in the wilderness with just a note? And more importantly, who was Emmett, and what had happened to his real parents? A sudden noise outside the cabin made Olivia freeze. It was faint. Could have been just the wind in the trees or a small animal scurrying past. But after the events of the day, she wasn't taking any chances. She quickly turned off her flashlight, plunging the cabin into near darkness, illuminated only by the orange glow from the stove's vents. She moved to the window, carefully peering out into the night. The clearing was bathed in moonlight now, making it easier to see than the dense forest had been. At first, she saw nothing unusual. Then, movement at the tree line caught her eye. It wasn't the bear returning, it was a person, a man, moving stealthily along the edge of the clearing, as if trying to stay hidden. A moment later, a second figure joined him. Even in the dim light, Olivia recognized them as the couple from the river. Her heart sank. Somehow, they had tracked her here. Perhaps they had simply followed her footprints, or maybe they knew about the cabin already. Either way, she was trapped. The cabin had only the one door, and the single window was too small for her to climb through with Emmett. She watched as the couple conferred in whispers, then split up, the man circling to the right while the woman moved left, clearly intending to surround the cabin. Olivia backed away from the window, mind racing. She needed a weapon, something to defend herself and Emmett with. Her eyes fell on a wooden rack near the door that held several tools: an axe, a hammer, and what looked like an old hunting rifle. She lunged for the rifle, hoping against hope that it was loaded, only to find that it was merely a decorative piece, its firing mechanism missing. The axe and hammer, however, were real enough. Olivia grabbed the hammer, its solid weight somewhat reassuring in her hand. She retreated to the bed where Emmett lay, positioning herself between the baby and the door. If they came in, she would go down fighting. The floorboards of the porch creaked as someone stepped on them. Olivia tightened her grip on the hammer, her palms slick with sweat. The door handle jiggled slightly. "It's locked," a voice hissed. The woman. "Break it down." "Are you crazy?" the man whispered back. "What if someone hears?" A harsh laugh. "Who's going to hear? We're miles from anywhere." "Fine, stand back." Olivia braced herself as a heavy thud shook the door. It held, but a second impact made the hinges groan ominously. It wouldn't withstand much more. Suddenly, a new sound cut through the night, a loud, bellowing roar that made the hair on Olivia's arms stand on end. It was followed by screams and the sound of running feet. Olivia rushed to the window just in time to see the mother bear charging across the clearing toward the porch. The couple fled in terror, the woman tripping and falling before scrambling up and disappearing into the trees with the man close behind. The bear didn't pursue them, instead stopping at the edge of the porch, standing guard like some improbable sentinel. Relief washed over Olivia in a dizzying wave. Once again, the bear had saved them. It was as if the animal had been watching over them all along, waiting to intervene if danger threatened. The concept was so far beyond normal bear behavior that Olivia could scarcely wrap her mind around it. She waited by the window for several minutes, but there was no sign of the couple returning. Eventually, the bear ambled back toward the forest, pausing at the tree line to look back at the cabin once more before melting into the shadows. Olivia returned to Emmett, who had slept through the entire drama. As the adrenaline ebbed from her system, exhaustion hit her like a physical blow. She needed to rest, at least for a few hours before figuring out their next move. She checked that the fire in the stove was safe to leave unattended, then curled up on the bed beside Emmett, positioning herself between him and the door. Despite her intention to stay alert, her eyes grew heavy, and soon she drifted into an uneasy sleep. Olivia dreamed of rushing water and glistening fur, of tiny fingers clutching at her shirt, and dark, intelligent eyes watching from the forest. In her dream, she was running, always running, with something precious held against her heart. She awoke with a start to early morning light filtering through the grimy window. For a moment she was disoriented, unsure of where she was or why her body ached so badly. Then she felt the small warm weight pressing against her side, and it all came rushing back. Emmett was awake, his blue eyes regarding her solemnly. When he saw her looking at him, his face broke into a toothless smile that tugged at something deep in Olivia's chest. Despite everything, the danger, the uncertainty, the bizarre circumstances, that smile made it all worthwhile. "Good morning, little survivor," she whispered, brushing a finger gently across his cheek. "Ready for another adventure today?" She sat up, wincing at the stiffness in her muscles, and took stock of their situation. The fire in the stove had died down to embers, but the cabin was still relatively warm. Sunlight revealed details she had missed in the darkness. A small bookshelf with a few dog-eared paperbacks, a deck of playing cards on the table, a faded photograph in a wooden frame showing an older man standing proudly beside a freshly caught fish. Olivia's stomach growled, reminding her that she hadn't eaten since her trail mix snack the previous afternoon. Emmett would be hungry too, and that presented a problem. What could she feed a baby out here in the wilderness? She investigated the canned goods on the shelf, finding mostly beans, soup, and fruit in syrup. Nothing suitable for an infant. Then, at the back of the shelf, her hand closed around a can that felt different from the others. She pulled it out and nearly cried with relief. Powdered milk. Not ideal for a baby, but in an emergency, it would have to do. After warming some water on the stove and mixing it with the powder to create a diluted milk solution, Olivia found a relatively clean cloth that she could use as a makeshift bottle nipple. It was primitive, but Emmett seemed grateful for the nourishment, sucking eagerly at the cloth as she carefully fed him. While he ate, Olivia considered their options. They needed to get back to civilization, to find proper help for Emmett, and alert authorities about the couple who had tried to harm him. But which way should they go? She had followed the bear to this cabin in the dark, paying little attention to their direction or the landmarks they passed. She wasn't even sure she could find her way back to the trail, let alone to her car. As if responding to her thoughts, a soft scratching sound came from the cabin door. Olivia tensed, immediately on guard, but something told her it wasn't the couple returning. Moving carefully so as not to disturb Emmett, who was still contentedly feeding, she approached the door and called out softly, "Who's there?" No answer, but the scratching came again, followed by a familiar huffing sound that made her pulse quicken. Could it be? Cautiously, Olivia opened the door a crack and peered out. There on the porch, sitting calmly as if it were the most natural thing in the world, was the mother bear. At her feet lay a freshly caught fish, still dripping water. Olivia stared in amazement. The bear was bringing them food. This went beyond unusual behavior into the realm of the impossible. Wild bears did not bring fish to humans. They did not lead strangers to safe shelters in the forest. They did not stand guard against threats in the night. And yet, this one had done all those things. "Thank you," she said softly to the bear, her voice thick with emotion. "But I can't take your fish. You need it for your cubs." As if understanding her words, the bear nudged the fish closer to the door with her snout, then backed away several paces, watching expectantly. Okay, Olivia relented with a small, incredulous laugh. "I'll take your fish. Thank you." She quickly reached down and grabbed the fish, noting that it was a good-sized trout, enough to provide her with a proper meal. The bear made a sound that almost seemed like approval, then turned and ambled toward the trees, looking back once as if to say, "Follow me when you're ready." Olivia closed the door, leaning against it as she tried to make sense of what was happening. The bear's behavior was so far beyond normal that she was beginning to wonder if she was hallucinating from stress and lack of sleep. But the fish in her hand was real enough, its scales gleaming in the morning light. "I think we have a guardian angel, Emmett," she told the baby as she returned to the bed, "a very large, furry guardian angel." After finishing feeding Emmett and eating some of the freshly cooked fish herself, Olivia knew they needed to get moving. The couple might return with reinforcements, or they might alert others to search for her. She couldn't stay hidden in this cabin forever. She found an old backpack hanging on a hook by the door and filled it with whatever supplies might be useful, the remaining powdered milk, a knife, matches, a small pot, and a couple of cans of food. She fashioned a sling for Emmett from one of the cleaner blankets, positioning him against her chest where she could keep him warm and secure, while leaving her hands relatively free. Before leaving, Olivia searched the cabin one last time, looking for anything that might tell her where they were or who owned this place. In a drawer of the small table, she found a faded map of the wilderness area. It was old, and the markings were difficult to make out, but she could see that the cabin was marked with a small X, and what appeared to be a ranger station was noted about 5 miles to the east. That would be their destination. With Emmett secured in his makeshift sling and the backpack on her shoulders, Olivia stepped out into the morning sunlight. The clearing looked different by day, less mysterious, more peaceful. Birds sang in the surrounding trees, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of pine and wildflowers. She scanned the tree line, half expecting to see the bear waiting for them, but there was no sign of the animal. Had it left them to fend for themselves now? The thought brought an unexpected pang of loss. Using the map and the position of the morning sun as guides, Olivia set off eastward toward the ranger station. The going was slow, the terrain was rough, and she had to be careful not to jostle Emmett too much. He seemed content in his sling, occasionally making soft cooing sounds, or reaching up to touch her chin with his tiny fingers. They had been walking for perhaps an hour when Olivia heard it, the sound of running water. Following the noise, they came to a small stream, clear and cold, running over smooth stones. It was a welcome sight. They could refill their water bottle and rest for a moment. As Olivia knelt by the stream, Emmett securely held against her chest with one arm, she noticed something odd about the water's flow. Just upstream, it seemed to be diverted slightly, as if something was partially blocking its natural course. Curious, she followed the stream upward and gasped at what she saw. A car, or what remained of one, lay half-submerged in the stream, its front end crumpled against a large boulder. It must have veered off a road somewhere above and crashed down into the ravine. The vehicle was an SUV, dark blue in color, with mud and debris coating its sides. The driver's door stood open, swaying slightly in the current. Olivia approached cautiously, a sense of dread building in her stomach. If this was where Emmett had come from. She peered inside the vehicle, steeling herself for what she might find. The interior was a mess, shattered glass, deployed airbags, and water damage everywhere. But there were no bodies, no signs of blood or struggle, just a soggy diaper bag wedged between the front seats and, her heart skipped a beat, an empty car seat mount in the back. This had to be Emmett's car. Someone had taken him from the wreckage, car seat and all, but instead of bringing him to safety, they had put him in the river. The thought made Olivia's blood boil. What kind of monsters would do such a thing to an innocent baby? She reached for the diaper bag, hoping it might contain information about Emmett or his family. As she did so, something caught her eye. A flash of white on the passenger seat. It was a purse, partially hidden by the deflated airbag. Inside, she found a wallet with a driver's license. Catherine Mitchell, Olivia read aloud, studying the photo of a young woman with auburn hair and a warm smile. Was this Emmett's mother? And if so, where was she now? Further inspection of the purse yielded a smartphone, dead, of course, and a small notebook. Flipping through the notebook, Olivia found mostly shopping lists and reminders, but on the last page was something that made her pause. A hastily scrawled note that read, "Meeting R.L. at cabin, 4 p.m., Bringy's papers." The mystery deepened. Who was R.L.? What papers did Emmett need? And what cabin was Catherine planning to visit? Was it the same one Olivia and Emmett had spent the night in? A sudden movement in her peripheral vision made Olivia whirl around, clutching Emmett protectively. She relaxed slightly when she saw it was the mother bear, standing on the opposite bank of the stream. The animal regarded her steadily, then turned its gaze to the wrecked car, as if it understood the significance of what Olivia had found. "Did you know about this?" Olivia asked softly, not expecting an answer. "Is that why you were watching the river yesterday?" Were you looking for survivors?" The bear made no sound, but something in its eyes, an intelligence, a presence, made Olivia shiver. There was a connection here that defied explanation, a thread linking the bear, the baby, and herself in ways she couldn't begin to comprehend. Emmett stirred in his sling, making a small sound of discomfort. It brought Olivia back to the reality of their situation. They were still lost in the wilderness, still being hunted, and now carrying evidence that could potentially solve the mystery of how Emmett had ended up in the river. "We need to keep moving," she told the bear, feeling only slightly foolish for talking to it. "Thank you for everything you've done for us." The bear watched as Olivia tucked the license, notebook, and a few items from the diaper bag into her backpack. Then, with one last huff, it turned and disappeared into the trees once more. Olivia continued eastward, following the map toward the ranger station, her mind buzzing with questions. Who was Catherine Mitchell, and what had happened to her? Were the couple from yesterday somehow connected to the car accident? And perhaps most puzzling of all, why had a wild bear taken such an interest in protecting a human baby? As they progressed through the forest, the terrain gradually changed. The thick pine forest began to thin, giving way to more widely spaced trees and occasionally open meadows dappled with wildflowers. In one such meadow, Olivia paused to rest, gently laying Emmett on a bed of soft grass while she consulted the map again. According to her calculations, they were about halfway to the ranger station. If they maintained their current pace, they might reach it by mid-afternoon. The thought gave her a surge of hope. Soon they would be safe, and she could turn over all the evidence she had found to the proper authorities. As she folded the map and tucked it back into her pocket, she noticed Emmett watching a butterfly that had landed on a nearby flower, his small hands reaching toward it in wonder. Despite everything they had been through, he seemed remarkably resilient. Babies, she reflected, lived entirely in the moment, a skill that many adults could benefit from. "You're teaching me a lot, you know that," she told him, reaching down to stroke his soft cheek. "About courage, about trust, about taking one step at a time." Emmett responded with a bright smile that made her heart swell. In the short time they had been together, she had grown deeply attached to this child who had literally been dumped into her life. What would happen to him once they reached safety? Would he be placed in foster care? The thought brought an unexpected pang of sadness. A sudden rustling in the tall grass at the edge of the meadow interrupted her thoughts. Olivia tensed, immediately scanning for danger. Was it the couple from yesterday? Had they somehow tracked them here? But it wasn't the couple who emerged from the grass. It was a tall, lean man with weathered features and a full beard, dressed in hiking gear and carrying a walking stick. He froze when he saw Olivia and Emmett, clearly as surprised to see them as they were to see him. "Hello there," he called cautiously, remaining at a distance. "Are you okay? Not often I run into people this far out." Olivia quickly scooped up Emmett, holding him protectively against her chest as she assessed the stranger. He appeared to be in his late 50s with kind eyes and an open expression. There was nothing threatening in his stance, but after yesterday's events, she wasn't taking any chances. "We're fine," she replied, trying to sound more confident than she felt. "Just taking a break before heading to the ranger station." The man nodded, his gaze moving from Olivia to the baby in her arms. A slight frown creased his forehead. "That's a mighty young hiking companion you've got there. Everything all right?" There was genuine concern in his voice, but Olivia hesitated. How much should she tell this stranger? For all she knew, he could be connected to the couple trying to harm Emmett. Yet something in his manner, the gentle way he leaned on his walking stick, the frank openness of his gaze, made her want to trust him. "Actually," she began slowly, "we could use some help. My name is Olivia, and this is Emmett. We've had a difficult couple of days." The man's expression softened. "I'm Marcus," he said. "Marcus Reed. I'm a retired park ranger. I still patrol these woods sometimes, keep an eye on things." He gestured to the baby. "Mind telling me how you ended up out here with an infant?" Olivia took a deep breath and began to explain about finding the car seat in the river, the bears' strange behavior, the couple who had pursued them, and the wrecked car they had discovered. She left out some of the more unbelievable details, like the bear bringing them fish or seemingly standing guard outside the cabin, but the story was bizarre enough even without those elements. Marcus listened without interrupting, his expression growing increasingly troubled. When she showed him Catherine Mitchell's driver's license and the notebook with its cryptic note, he frowned deeply. "I know this area like the back of my hand," he said, looking at the license photo. "And I've never heard of a Catherine Mitchell. The nearest town is Pinecrest, about 20 miles south of here. Not many folks live out this way." "What about the cabin?" Olivia asked. "Do you know who it belongs to?" Marcus nodded. "That old place has been abandoned for years. Used to belong to a hunter named Jim Wayland, but he passed away almost a decade ago. His family never bothered to sell it or tear it down. It's just been sitting there." He paused, looking thoughtful. "Though recently, I've noticed signs of someone using it. Nothing definite, just tracks around the property, fresh-cut wood. Figured it was hikers taking shelter." Olivia digested this information, trying to fit it into the puzzle. And the note about meeting R.L. at a cabin. Could that be the same place? "Could be," Marcus agreed. "But there are a few other cabins scattered throughout these woods. Hard to say which one she meant." He fell silent for a moment, staring off into the distance. Then he turned back to Olivia, his expression grave. "Listen, I don't want to alarm you, but there have been some strange goings-on in these woods lately. Reports of vehicles coming and going at odd hours. People who don't look like your typical hikers or campers." He lowered his voice. "Some folks in Pinecrest think there might be drug activity, a lab or distribution point hidden somewhere in the forest." Olivia felt a chill run down her spine. "You think Emmett and his mother might have gotten caught up in something like that?" "I don't know," Marcus admitted. "But finding a wrecked car and a baby in a car seat floating down the river, that's not normal. And those people chasing you, they sound like they have something to hide." Emmett squirmed in Olivia's arms, making a small sound of discomfort. She adjusted the sling, bouncing him gently to soothe him. "The ranger station is about 2 miles east of here," Marcus said, making a decision. "I can guide you there. You'll be safe, and they can call in the proper authorities to investigate." Olivia nodded gratefully. Having an experienced guide, especially one who was a former ranger, was a stroke of luck she hadn't expected. "What about the bear?" she asked as they began walking. "The one that rescued Emmett from the river. Have you ever seen anything like that before?" Marcus gave her a curious look. Bears are intelligent creatures, more so than most people give them credit for. But what you're describing, it's unusual, to say the least. Bears don't typically go out of their way to help humans." He paused. "Though there was an old legend among the indigenous people of this region about a spirit bear, a guardian of the forest and its creatures. The stories say it would sometimes intervene when innocent lives were threatened." Olivia thought about the bear's intelligent eyes, the way it had seemed to understand exactly what they needed. "Do you believe in those legends?" Marcus shrugged. I've seen enough strange things in these woods to keep an open mind. Nature has its own wisdom, its own way of balancing things. They walked in companionable silence for a while, with Marcus occasionally pointing out landmarks or interesting plants. Olivia found herself relaxing in his presence. It felt good to share the burden of their situation with someone else, to have an ally in their journey. As they rounded a bend in the trail, Marcus suddenly stopped, holding up a hand for silence. Olivia froze, instantly alert. "What is it?" she whispered. "Voices," Marcus replied softly. "Up ahead, and I don't think it's the Rangers." Now Olivia heard it too, the low murmur of conversation just beyond a dense thicket of evergreens. Marcus motioned for her to follow him off the trail, leading her behind a large, fallen log where they could observe without being seen. Through a gap in the trees, Olivia could make out 3 people standing in a small clearing, 2 men and a woman. With a jolt of recognition, she realized the woman was from the couple that had chased her yesterday. The men were unfamiliar, one tall and thin, with a shaved head, the other stocky with a red flannel shirt. "Told you to get rid of it properly," the tall man was saying, his voice tight with anger. "Not toss it in the river where anyone could find it." "We did what we could," the woman protested. "It's not easy disposing of a car seat, and the baby—" "Don't say it," the man in flannel interrupted sharply. "Don't even mention that. We need to focus on finding them now." "The woman could be anywhere," the tall man said. "She could have reached a road, flagged down help." "No," the woman insisted. "She went into the forest, saw her myself, and with a baby slowing her down, she can't have gotten far." "What about the woman from the car?" the flannel man asked. "Any sign of her?" The tall man shook his head. "Nothing. We searched the area where we took the kid. She wasn't there." "She might have survived the crash," the woman suggested. "Could be wandering around out here somewhere." "Then find her," the tall man snapped. "Find them all. And this time, do it right." Olivia's heart pounded so loudly she was sure they would hear it. These people were clearly looking for her and Emmett. And from the sound of it, Catherine Mitchell, if she was indeed Emmett's mother, might still be alive somewhere in the forest. Marcus touched her arm gently, signaling for them to back away. Carefully, moving as quietly as possible, they retreated until they were far enough away to speak in whispers. "Drug runners," Marcus said grimly. "I'd bet my pension on it. And it sounds like they've got a missing woman on their hands, too." "We need to get to the ranger station," Olivia said urgently. "Now." Marcus nodded. "We should circle around, avoid the main trail. It'll take longer, but it's safer." They set off again, with Marcus leading them on a winding path through dense underbrush and over rocky outcroppings. The going was much slower now, and Olivia found herself constantly looking over her shoulder, half expecting to see the men from the clearing pursuing them. Emmett, perhaps sensing her tension, began to fuss. His whimpers grew louder, threatening to turn into full-blown cries that would give away their position. Olivia tried everything she could think of to quiet him, rocking, patting, soft whispers, but nothing seemed to work. "He might be hungry," Marcus suggested. "How long since he last ate?" "Hours," Olivia realized, "and I'm out of the powdered milk I was using." "There's a stream just ahead," Marcus said. "We can stop there, try to figure something out." They reached the stream, a narrow, shallow ribbon of water trickling over smooth stones, and Olivia sat down on a boulder, gently bouncing Emmett in her arms. His face was scrunched up in discomfort, his cries growing more insistent. "I don't know what to do," she admitted, feeling helpless. "If I can't quiet him down, they'll hear us for sure." Marcus looked around, thinking. There might be something at the ranger station, but that's still a good hour away, even pushing hard. Emmett's cries grew louder, echoing through the quiet forest. Olivia felt tears of frustration pricking at her own eyes. After everything they had been through, to be betrayed by something as simple as hunger, it seemed cruelly unfair. A rustling in the bushes nearby made them both tense. Marcus moved in front of Olivia protectively, his walking stick raised like a weapon. But what emerged from the underbrush wasn't a threat. It was the mother bear, moving with surprising quietness for such a large animal. In her mouth, she carried something, a honeycomb dripping with golden honey. She approached carefully, dropping the honeycomb at Olivia's feet before backing away a few paces. Olivia and Marcus exchanged astonished glances. "I've been a ranger for 30 years, Marcus said, his voice hushed with awe. "I've never seen anything like this." Olivia picked up the honeycomb, hardly believing what was happening. She knew that honey wasn't ideal for babies, but a small amount diluted with water might help to calm Emmett until they reached the ranger station. Using her finger, she carefully collected a tiny drop of honey and mixed it with water from the stream in the cap of her water bottle. Then, with Marcus and the bear both watching in silence, she offered it to Emmett. The baby hesitated, then accepted the sweet liquid, his cries subsiding as he tasted it. "Thank you," Olivia said to the bear, feeling a lump in her throat. "Again." The bear huffed softly, then turned and disappeared back into the forest as silently as she had come. "I think I'm starting to believe in that spirit bear legend," Marcus murmured, shaking his head in disbelief. With Emmett temporarily satisfied, they continued their journey, moving faster now that they no longer needed to worry about his crying giving away their position. The forest grew less dense as they traveled, and Olivia began to spot signs of human presence. A trail marker here, a chopped log there. "We're getting close to the ranger station," Marcus confirmed. "Another 15 minutes or so." Relief swept through Olivia. They were almost safe. Soon they would have proper help, and the mystery surrounding Emmett and his mother might begin to unravel. But as they crested a small rise, Marcus suddenly froze, throwing out an arm to stop Olivia. "Wait," he whispered, his voice tight. "Something's wrong." Ahead of them, through the trees, the roof of the ranger station was visible. A simple log structure with a radio antenna protruding from one side. But instead of the sense of safety Olivia had expected to feel, something about the scene ahead filled her with dread. "There should be a vehicle," Marcus said quietly. "Standard issue jeep or truck. And there's no smoke from the chimney." He pointed to a thin trail of disturbed earth leading to the ranger station door. "And those aren't ranger boot prints." Olivia clutched Emmett closer. "What does it mean?" "It means we're not going in there," Marcus decided. "Not yet. Something's off. I need to check it out first." He guided Olivia to a dense thicket of undergrowth where she and Emmett could remain hidden. "Stay here," he instructed. "If I'm not back in 20 minutes, head south. There's a logging road about a mile in that direction. It doesn't see much traffic, but it's your best bet for finding help." Olivia wanted to protest, to insist that they stay together, but she could see the determination in Marcus's eyes. He knew these woods, knew the rangers and their protocols. If he sensed something was wrong, she trusted his judgment. "Be careful," she whispered as he slipped away, moving with practiced silence through the trees. Alone with Emmett, Olivia tried to control her mounting anxiety. Everything had seemed to be going well. They had found Marcus, avoided the drug runners, and were so close to safety. Now, this new complication threatened to unravel it all. Time stretched endlessly as she waited, counting the minutes in her head while Emmett dozed against her chest. 15 minutes passed, then 20. Olivia began to worry. Should she wait longer? Should she start heading south as Marcus had instructed? Just as she was preparing to leave the hiding spot, a twig snapped nearby. Olivia froze, holding her breath. Footsteps approached, too heavy to be Marcus's careful tread. "I know you're here somewhere," a voice called, male, unfamiliar, with an edge of menace. "Why don't you come out and make this easier for everyone?" Olivia remained perfectly still, one hand covering Emmett's mouth gently in case he woke and made a sound. The footsteps moved closer, circling the thicket where she hid. "The old ranger told us everything," the voice continued. "About the baby, about the car you found. He was very cooperative, eventually." A cold dread washed over Olivia. Had they hurt Marcus? Forced him to reveal where she was hiding? She couldn't believe he would betray them willingly. "Last chance," the voice said, now just a few feet away. "Come out now, or things will get much worse for you and the kid." Olivia's mind raced. She couldn't outrun them, not while carrying Emmett. But she couldn't surrender either, not to people who had tried to let an innocent baby drown in a river. Her eyes darted around, searching for anything she could use as a weapon or a means of escape. And then she saw it. A massive shadow moving silently through the trees behind the unseen man. The bear had returned, and this time she wasn't alone. Behind her, at least 3 more bears moved in formation, surrounding the area where Olivia hid. Before she could process what was happening, a roar shattered the forest's quiet. A sound so primal and powerful that it seemed to shake the very air. It was followed by shouts of alarm and the sound of running feet. "What the hell?" the man's voice cried out. "Bears! There are bears everywhere!" More shouts joined his, and the sound of gunfire erupted briefly before being drowned out by additional roars and the crash of large bodies moving through the underbrush. The chaos lasted only minutes before silence fell once more. Olivia remained frozen in her hiding place, unsure what had just happened or whether it was safe to emerge. Had the bears attacked the men, or merely scared them off? And where was Marcus? "Olivia?" a familiar voice called softly. "It's safe now. You can come out." Relief flooded through her as she recognized Marcus's voice. Cautiously, she emerged from the thicket, Emmett still clutched tightly to her chest. Marcus stood nearby, a fresh cut on his forehead but otherwise appearing unharmed. "What happened?" she asked, rushing to his side. "Are you okay? They said they made you tell them where I was." Marcus grimaced. "They tried, roughed me up a bit, but I fed them false information, told them you were hiding near the East Trail." He looked around, still appearing somewhat dazed. "I was trying to circle back to warn you when all hell broke loose. Bears, more bears than I've ever seen in one place, just appeared out of nowhere and charged the men." "Did they?" Olivia couldn't finish the question. "No," Marcus assured her. "They just scared them off. Sent them running back toward their vehicles, but they won't go far. We need to move now." "What about the ranger station?" Olivia asked. Marcus shook his head grimly. "Those men got there first. The ranger on duty is tied up inside. I managed to free him, but he's injured. Not badly, but enough that he can't travel with us. He's radioed for help, but it will take hours for backup to arrive from the nearest town." "So, what do we do?" Olivia asked, feeling the brief flash of hope fading. "There's a fire watchtower about 3 miles from here," Marcus said. "It's staffed year-round, has better communications equipment, and is more defensible than the ranger station. That's our best bet now." As they prepared to leave, Olivia noticed the mother bear standing at the edge of the clearing, watching them intently. The other bears had vanished as mysteriously as they had appeared. "I don't understand," she said softly to Marcus. "Why is she helping us?" Marcus looked at the bear for a long moment. "I think," he said slowly, "that there's more to this story than we know. Something connecting that bear to Emmett or to his mother." "But how is that possible?" "I don't know," Marcus admitted, "but I intend to find out." He adjusted his pack. "Come on. We need to reach the watchtower before dark." As they set off once more, Olivia glanced back to see the mother bear following at a distance, a silent guardian keeping watch over their journey. The path to the fire watchtower took them higher into the mountains, along steep trails that wound through increasingly sparse forest. The air grew cooler as they climbed, and Olivia wrapped the blanket more securely around Emmett to protect him from the chill. The baby had been remarkably quiet throughout their ordeal, as if sensing the need for silence. "Tell me more about this Catherine Mitchell," Marcus said as they walked. "You said you found her ID in the crashed car. Was there anything else? Any hint of what she was doing out here?" Olivia repeated what she had found: the purse, the phone, the notebook with its cryptic note about meeting R.L. at a cabin and bringing E's papers. She also mentioned the note that had been with Emmett in the car seat, though most of it had been too damaged by water to read. Emmett's papers, Marcus mused. Could be birth certificate, social security card, that sort of thing. But why would someone need those out here in the wilderness? "And who is R.L.?" Olivia added. The men at the clearing mentioned the woman from the car. They said she might have survived the crash and could be wandering in the forest. "Could that be Catherine?" "It's possible," Marcus agreed. "But if she survived, why didn't she take her baby with her?" The question hung in the air between them, unanswered. There were too many missing pieces to the puzzle, too many uncertainties. As the sun began to dip toward the western horizon, the fire watchtower came into view. Unlike the ranger station's horizontal log construction, the watchtower rose vertically from the mountainside. A tall, slender structure with a glass-enclosed observation deck at the top. A series of metal stairs zigzagged up its exterior. "Almost there," Marcus encouraged. "Just a bit further." But as they approached the base of the tower, Olivia noticed that Marcus had slowed, his posture tense. "What's wrong?" she asked. "There should be smoke," he said quietly. "Someone's always on duty and they keep a stove going for heat, especially in the evenings. But there's no smoke coming from the chimney." A cold feeling settled in Olivia's stomach. Had the men who had been searching for them reached the watchtower too? Were they walking into another trap? "What do we do?" she whispered. Marcus considered for a moment. "I'll go check it out. Same as before. You stay hidden, and if I'm not back in 20 minutes, you find your own way to safety." "No," Olivia said firmly. "We're not splitting up again. It's too dangerous." "Olivia, we go together," she insisted. "Or not at all." After a moment, Marcus nodded, acknowledging her determination. "All right, together. But stay behind me and be ready to run if things go south." They approached the tower cautiously, alert for any sign of movement or danger. The area around the base was deserted. No vehicles, no fresh footprints in the dirt. The metal stairs clanged softly under their feet as they began to climb, the sound seeming unnaturally loud in the quiet evening air. About halfway up, Marcus stopped suddenly, holding up a hand for silence. Olivia strained her ears but heard nothing unusual, just the faint whisper of wind through the trees below. "What is it?" she whispered. "Not sure," Marcus replied, equally quiet. "Thought I heard something from inside?" They continued climbing, more slowly now, testing each step before putting their full weight on it to minimize noise. As they neared the top, Olivia could see through the windows of the observation deck. A simple interior with a desk, radio equipment, a small wood stove, and a narrow cot. And on the cot, lying very still, was a figure covered with a blanket. Marcus reached the door first, testing the handle carefully. It was unlocked. With a quick glance at Olivia, he eased it open and stepped inside, she following close behind. The interior of the watchtower was cold, the stove long gone out. It smelled of dust and pine and something else, a medicinal scent that Olivia couldn't quite place. The figure on the cot didn't stir at their entrance. "Hello?" Marcus called softly. "Forest Service. Is everything okay?" No response. Olivia's heart raced as Marcus approached the cot, ready to pull back the blanket. Was it the tower's regular occupant? Had the drug runners gotten here first after all? Marcus gently tugged the blanket down, revealing the face of a young woman with auburn hair. Her eyes were closed, her skin pale, but Olivia could see the shallow rise and fall of her chest. She was alive, but unconscious or asleep. With a gasp of recognition, Olivia stepped forward. "It's her," she whispered. "It's Catherine Mitchell." Sure enough, the woman on the cot was the same one from the driver's license photo, Emmett's mother. But what was she doing here, and what had happened to her? As if sensing their presence, Catherine's eyelids fluttered. A small moan escaped her lips, and her head turned slightly on the pillow.